a real-world problem to explore concepts and challenges. So this is the Winchester South Coal Mine. So this is a mine that's proposed in Queensland at the moment. It's inland from Mackay, so map of Queensland there on the left. Inland from Mackay, a big mining town called Moranbah. And you can see the arrow taking out to essentially a layout of the mine. And there's an existing, it's part of the Bowen Basin, so there's a massive coal basin called the Bowen Basin that stretches south from Mackay, and it's where most of the coal mines in Queensland are currently located. So we've got around 50 coal mines in Queensland. We're a massive exporter of particularly coking coal, so that's high value coal, about 90%, more than 90% composed of carbon, very little water in it, so it's very dry. Captured from the atmosphere about 250 million years ago in the Carboniferous period. And so coking coal is used in steel production. There's also a component of thermal coal. So thermal coal is burnt in power stations to generate steam and drive turbines. Coking coal is used for steel production. So coking and thermal coal are two main uses for coal. And the Bowen Basin has really high value coal. It's extensively developed, many mines and many big rail lines and ports to export, particularly to China, to Japan, South Korea, India, a range of other countries. So massive exports. And just notice on that slide to the right, the Peak Downs mine, because I'm going to show you a picture of what an existing open cut coal mine looks like. So this is just the mine pits. Can I get rid of that? So on this there's the main pit, north, west pit, northwest pit, south pit, well, not very big. So you've got, and main pit south. And this is just if you get into coal mines, so I've done a lot of court cases against coal mines over the last couple of decades. So basically I'm not involved in this court case at the moment in the Land Court, but been involved in a lot of objections to coal mines, big EISs, and this is a typical way that the proponent presents how the mine will progress over time. So it basically looks very colourful, doesn't it? But the blue, if you've got those three pits in mind, the blue represents the early years, the green represents the middle years, going to red at the end. So basically each colour represents the year when they intend to mine that. And then notice the Peak Downs mine here. It's about just on this, also just raise with you, if I can find a pointer. Sorry, very bad drawing on it, but that's a scale down in that right-hand corner. You can't see it, but it's indicating 4 kilometres across in that bar. So the mine is about 2 to 4 kilometres across and about 8 to 10 kilometres if you stretched it sort of southeast. So, and then the Peak Downs mine is about 4 kilometres off to the southwest. And so this is what the Peak Down coal mine looks like. And what you've got here is the mine is progressing to the east. So that's the working face. And then this is essentially the tailings, or basically the overburden. So what normally happens with these big open cut coal mines is you start at a convenient point that's normally, if the coal is dipping into the ground, you start at the shallowest point and you take off the overburden and then you dig down to the coal and then you progress along. And in these massive coal mines, they have a massive open cut face and you basically dig into the coal and then you put essentially the waste material behind you as you go. So that's why I say it's progressing to the left. In this picture is looking south, so the left is essentially east. It's progressing to the east, and you can see the brown at the top is the overburden, so that's just normal earth, and then the black and greys, as you get down to it, are essentially the coal seams. So those was essentially laid down 250 million years ago, so they're basically pure carbon. And this is another big coal mine, the Adani mine or the Carmichael mine, up in central Queensland. You can see really clearly here the overburden. If I can get my... So this is the overburden, so not coal, and then you get down to essentially the coal seams in the black. And so this mine is progressing actually to the west because the coal seams in that location dip to the west, so it started at the shallowest point. And basically open cut coal mines from a miner's perspective are good because you get to take all of the coal. You take off the overburden and you get to take all of the coal. But once they get basically beneath about 100 metres beneath the overburden, they become too expensive to take off the overburden. So then you go underground. So the Carmichael mine is progressing to the west, and it's basically got these massive open cut pits. And then when the overburden gets too big, it will go underground. And the disadvantage for miners of the underground is you have to leave bits. You can't take all of the coal. To basically, you leave bits as you go. You can have a sort of face that you're working, but it's not able to recover everything. But it's too expensive at that point to get the overburden. So they're enormous, these pits, and the enormous scale of them is really difficult to comprehend. I've driven around like a number of them, like the Carmichael mine. We went on a site visit for it, and like it took us best part of a day to drive from the north to the south of it. You're just going through miles and miles of country thinking, gosh, in 10 years' time, this is going to be a massive coal pit that's like 100 metres deep. And just to give you some idea of scale, UQ, the campus, is about 1 kilometre across. And a 4-kilometre grid square would basically stretch from here all the way into the city. So if you've been into the city, caught the bus or anything, just imagine you've gone in there. That's basically 4 kilometres. So put your hand up if you live within that grid square. If you're living in St Lucia or West End, I know heaps of people living in West End catch the bus across. So yeah, a big chunk of us, I live in that square over near Wollongabba. So huge area in that 4 kilometres. And so this mine is like multiple of those 4x4 squares. It's an enormous area. And this is just one of 50 mines in Queensland. So this is the proponent's summary of the key benefits of the mine. So I've just taken a screen grab from their website. So key benefits, it says, are 500 jobs during construction operations, 254 million in additional wages in net present value terms, 5.7 billion to Queensland suppliers. Mine is proposed to go for 30 years. 882 million additional net economic benefits for Queensland. 696 million in royalties. So the coal is owned by the state government, and when they grant a mining lease to buy the coal, the miners pay what we call a royalty, but you could call it a tax, but it's not really a tax. It's more a payment for the good that you're purchasing. So they purchase it and pay a royalty, and there's $1 billion worth of investment, and it's metallurgical coal, so coking coal for steel production and thermal coal for energy generation. And that's based on a number of factors in the coal, particularly the coal content and its energy values, whether it's the higher grade coking coal or the lower grade steaming coal. Now, there's no mention. Yes, question?
I want to know if the royalty is only paid one time or is annual?
Sorry, is the royalty only paid one time?
Yes, the company only pays the royalty one time to the government, or it's annual?
That's right. Yes, good question. So does the company just pay the royalty one time? They pay it on an ongoing basis for the coal that they produce, so they don't have to pay at the outset 696 million. They basically don't have to pay it until they start extracting the coal. And then essentially if they're extracting about 17 million tonnes of coal a year, they pay about 8% for what they produce each year. And so if you did the maths, 17 million. Can someone look up for me the current price of coking coal? You can just do a Google for it. So global coking coal price, and you'll see graphs. It's normally around 200 to 300 Australian dollars per tonne. So if you multiply, that's gross. So if you then multiply 17 million by 200, has anyone been able to find me the current price of global? It varies a bit depending on the quality, but anyone? Okay, let's just say it's $200 a tonne. Multiply that by 17 million tonnes a year, and then 10%, 8 to 10% of that is basically paid as the royalties. Cool. And yeah, you pay it progressively, effectively. One thing that the company doesn't mention is the company tax. So mining companies, multinational companies, what they do to avoid paying taxes in Australia. So the royalties is one component of like what the government might get from a mine. But then a company that makes a profit in Australia has to pay company tax in Australia. But what multinational companies do, and Australia has basically allowed for the last 30 years, which is one reason which makes us so popular with multinationals, is you create a company in Australia, then you create a company in Singapore particularly, or Ireland, a country that has very low tax rates, and then from your company that is in Singapore or Ireland, you loan all of the money to do the project in Australia, like you loan them $5 billion, and then the company in Australia pays back the loan and interest to the company in in Singapore or Ireland or another low tax country. And then voila, there's no profits in Australia because we're repaying the loan to our related company in Singapore or Ireland, where company tax rates, like in Australia, what's our company tax rate is 34%. In Ireland, it's been 5% for years. Really low compared to Australia. So multinationals basically profit shifting is a really big way that they make money. There's this article just on the 29th of July this year about the Adani mine that I've mentioned a couple of times. So when it was proposed a decade ago, there was a lot of press about it will generate 22 billion in income for Australia. And a decade on, despite some pretty impressive money being generated in the first few years of operation, it's paid zero corporate tax in Australia, and it's projected to never pay a cent. And they do that by basically setting up related party transactions, so they never have a profit. The company never has a profit in Australia, and it's just outrageous. Our taxation system around our coal and gas and multinational corporations is a travesty. But park that. Winchester South Coal Mine is a couple of key facts. It's just started an 8-week hearing in the Land Court of Queensland, and the hearing is open to the public, and you can attend it if you'd like to see some evidence, and the court's in operation. So if anyone is interested, send me an email. I can give you the details. And they're hearing evidence from experts, including relating to climate change. They just had Martine Marone. Has anyone had Professor Martine Marone, who's a fantastic professor in the School of Environment? She gave evidence last week about offsets and biodiversity impacts. Professor Hugh Possingham, a brilliant UQ professor, is giving evidence, I think, this week. And so a number of UQ staff are involved as experts. And so you could go along to the hearing, just sit in, it's open to the public. There's multiple grounds of objection, including biodiversity impacts, inadequacies of offsets, and climate change. If approved, the mine will generate 17 million tonnes of coal a year over its 28-year lifespan, and at least, in total, 383 million tonnes of climate pollution or greenhouse emissions. So that's when the coal is burnt. To put that in context, it's a pretty big mine. be one of Queensland's biggest. Our 50 coal mines range from producing sort of 1 to 2 million tonnes a year to 17, 18 million tonnes. That's a big mine. And yeah, the emissions are equivalent. Australia's national emissions directly each year are about 440 million tonnes. So this mine will generate over its lifetime more than a year's worth of Australia's entire emissions. The ICJ decision came down just after the case had started and has really shifted the goalposts, because one of the things in assessing the mine that the government has to do is look at the public interest, and the public interest involves weighing up the benefits of the mine and the costs. It's sort of this classic weighing up exercise. And when you're doing a public interest test, it's easy to look at these sorts of figures. 500 jobs, 696 million in royalties. They're all quantifiable, easy to grasp, and those sorts of quantifiable figures weigh really heavily in the weighing up process against often only qualitative impacts on the environment, like the emissions of 528 or 83 million tonnes of CO2 in the context of it's about 30 gigatons of CO2 emissions globally each year. It's hard to sort of see where those impacts are specifically. So in the weighing up exercise, often the jobs and royalties get precedence in most decision makers' minds over the impact, the vague qualitative impacts on the environment. But what the ICJ decision has done is really shift the goalpost, because now climate reparations, so paying for the damage that's caused by a mine like this, are now really on the cards for Australia. So if we approve it, we might get 696 or 86 million in royalties, but if we're then liable for 2 trillion in damages globally, then the mine is actually net negative for Australia financially. So it's really shifted the goalposts. Okay, so that's the problem. Can we now move on to unpacking your legal toolkit for environmental impact assessment? So I want to use this mine to just think about, well, how does environmental impact assessment for a project like this work? What are the sort of factors? What sort of governments are involved in it? Got a question? Yeah, great. Great question. I'll repeat it. If we approve this mine, it's expected to last for 30 years, can we shut it down, like in 5 or 10 years' time, if we want to? The simple answer to that is no, not at least at the national government level. Once it's approved, basically, in Australia, you'd hear all these screams from the Mineral Resources Council and the like, talking about sovereign risk, which is governments changing the rules and companies that have invested money in Australia then not being able to make the money that they thought they'd make. So there'd be all sort of claims around sovereign risk. So basically, no, we can't shut it down. One thing, and I'm actually going to write an article about this in terms of looking at options for when climate reparations come on board, is Australia could tax them. So the Commonwealth government could tax them, essentially just call it a climate reparations tax, and essentially make it unfinancial for them. So there are mechanisms we could use to shut them down without actually cancelling the project approval. And it may well be that the financial factors so people are also looking to sue companies. So that's been one of my big projects, is looking for ways to sue, instead of countries, sue companies directly. And so once companies start to be held liable for these impacts, these projects are just bankrupted. They're unviable if you actually pay for the damage. They only get away with it by digging up the coal, selling it, and then emitting it to the atmosphere for free. If you actually paid for the damage, all of these projects are unviable. So it's more likely over the 30-year course of this mine that it will fold for financial reasons rather than be shut down by government. And that's been a big factor over the last 2 decades, why a lot of mines in central Queensland, big mines that were proposed, they got all their approvals and they haven't proceeded because the outlook, if you're going to invest $20 billion in a project and your payback is going to occur over 30 years, and you think over the course of 30 years fossil fuels are stuffed, then it's only if you basically going to get your money back in the short term that it's actually worthwhile. So, cool. Send it to that question. Any other questions at this stage?